Well, I got a lover named Liberty. Yeah, she's always telling me I gotta be free. I'm never gonna put any chains on me. Oh, she's the kind of lover that you just don't leave. Yeah, if I wanna keep her, I gotta treat her right. Yeah, to come for liberty, you know you better get up and fight. All the enemies of liberty, you're always drawing near. Yeah, defend liberty before she disappears. Well, I got a lover named Liberty. Oh, we fit together so naturally. Yeah, gift from God given to me. Oh, she is the one divine beauty. Yeah, if I wanna keep her, I better treat her right. Oh, they come with liberty, you know you better get up and fight. Yeah, the enemies of liberty are always drawing near. Yeah, defend liberty before she disappears.
Hey, welcome, brothers and sisters. Will Keller here. Greetings. Good day or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for tuning in. This is kind of a late evening live stream for me. I planned on doing this earlier in the day, but you know, life happens and you just got to flow with it, right? Which is perfect, actually, statement for today, March 14th. 3/14, it's Pi Day, you know, depending where you're at. You know, it might be the 15th where you're at, but still, it's a great day to kind of talk about some esoteric mathematics, which in fact, this has everything to do with natural law. And I'm going to kind of pinpoint some correlations on moral law, natural law, nature in general, the language of nature that we as humans, imbued with logic and reason, can observe, understand, and harmonize with. Because this is exactly what pi and phi are all about. Harmonic resonance, symbiosis, harmony, that is innate, inherent in the very fabric of reality. In fact, it is reality. We're talking about the governing dynamics. And this is going to be, you know, we're going to run through a whole bunch of things. By no means am I a mathematician. I think a lot of mathematicians are very one-sided and are atomists and materialists, right? But yet we are blessed in the fact that we do have this language that we call mathematics that can give us a greater understanding of the workings and the governing dynamics of nature and reality. And we can utilize these. So looking forward to kind of diving into some cool, fun facts and connecting these dots with the correlations. And yeah, it's going to be good. Okay, I'm live. I'm coming through. What's up, everyone? Bring back the ether 100%, which greetings, Nick. Soul Expression, what's up? Cosmic Surfers in the house. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Which you bring up a really good point, Nick, is I've been working on this presentation for a long time, and it is my ether presentation. I think that category right there, done correctly, it is really a unifying category, and it's actually going to be very reactive because it breaks down and maybe even reconciles the categories of quantum and also a general worldview, a cosmology, epistemological structure of the world. Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest minds in history for human beings, also one of the most censored minds. Died flat broke, and a lot of his work was hijacked and actually used against us today, weaponized a lot of that knowledge and that technology, and primarily the scalar weapons and the scalar technology as well. But the reason why I bring him up, because his understanding of the ether itself is one of the most suppressed bodies of information from Nikola Tesla. And that is actually one of the most profound bodies of information that we need to understand, because with the removal of the ether itself, the median, the substrate of reality, solipsism, relativism, moral relativism, materialism in the guise of something like quantum and quantum mechanics, it just takes over, which it has. It has, especially in the scientific realms, which, let's make no bones about it, right? Science itself is there. It is a modality. Every single person can be a scientist and should be a scientist at varying degrees and gradients. But we need to understand that science itself, knowledge, sciere, right, from the Latin, knowledge, that gnosis is natural law. So it's pretty fascinating, and that process of truth discovery using the scientific method is coming to understand objective truth, objective reality, and how that correlates with the self and the subjective experience. So we can apply this in life, to do what? To be a better person, right? To pursue a purpose, to expand meaning itself. So yeah, that presentation is going to be huge, and I'm looking forward to it. I just want to do it. I want to do it right to my own personal standard, and I want to get out the other presentations of spirit of earth, of air. I already did water. I recently did fire at the Funnel 5 conference, which I actually do have an extended version of that, which I'm probably going to do here in the few weeks. But regardless, we are here today on Pi Day, and let's get into some of these topics. And real quick, little housekeeping. I'm going to do a presentation tomorrow for in the States. It'll be the 15th. I'm going to do it earlier in the day. I'll probably do a post and announce it, but it's going to be on the season of sacrifice. This is a topic that needs to be talked about now, right now, because March 19th is the jump off of the season of sacrifice. And then obviously March 21st, officially spring here in the West. And we need to understand what the energetic implications and the psychological time period is, and what that means for us as individuals to take action, but also what does that mean for the social engineers that understand the climate the energetic, metaphysical climate, and how to utilize those energies against us. And obviously, the springtime is the time for planting seeds, sowing in the earth, not only physically, but mentally, spiritually. And so we can reap the harvest, come fall, come the harvest time itself. But the season of sacrifice, from the dark occultist and the social engineer's perspective, that is a time to spill blood, to give sacrifice towards the larger egregore, the negative egregores. And they do that by way of false flags, not only, fake events or psyops, but also real. They want to shed real blood. So it's a good time to be vigilant, have discernment, understand what this time period is, what it means for you, taking action within your own life, and how we can transmute this time period, this natural cycle of energy and sowing and renewal. And yeah, so tomorrow I'm going to talk about that, and I think it's a good time to do it because there's a lot of shit going on in the world, obviously, and yeah, awareness reveals choice. 100% natural law right there. What's up, Brandon? Good seeing you. Etienne, brother, how's it going? Thanks for joining. Appreciate you all. Got all the platforms up and running. Oh, I forgot to do Instagram. Oh, well. Anyways, all right, let's get into this. So, let me pull up my images and my notes real quick. Obviously, the title card is Pi, the mathematical signature of natural law. And just to get a definition out of the way, for people that are kind of new to my work or just stopping into this live stream, right? Natural law, defining natural, the inherent, meaning creation, from creation, law, meaning an immutable, unchanging dynamic or condition. So we were talking about the governing dynamics of nature, of creation itself. Now that's a huge category. That can go off into all different types of directions. And of course, when I'm referring to natural law, it's the boundary conditions. It is the governing dynamics of human behavior, consequence, cause and effect, moral law. And a lot of these things that I'm going to touch into today, it's going to lead to what that means on a moral level, on individual accountability and responsibility. And this is just another shift in perspective. Those that might be a little more left-brained, right? We are human beings. Pattern recognition, the potential to recognize patterns is extremely high for humans, right? Not that many people obviously have that activated, but yet this is just a shift in perspective, a different angle to explain cause and effect, to understand moral law, real karma, and why human beings thinking and acting correctly within the objective standard of nature, how this accumulates and creates a certain outcome, the outcome that many of us say we want, which is freedom, right? Even within our own life, right? We want health and all of these good things. So it's always going to lead to natural law. All my work points back to natural law. So let's get into the mystery of pi, right? And there's a lot of information out there, and some of this stuff I'm going to kind of run through pretty light. I'm not really going to get into the nitty gritty of mathematics or arithmetic, right? But it's good to know, first and foremost, mathematics itself is a man-made language based in objective truth. It's correct because it does align with nature, with truth itself, right? There are no numbers in nature. Nature does not do math. Nature does ratios and proportions. Nature just is, and how it expresses and how creation just is correlates to certain patterns and cycles. And we have developed mathematics, right? This is why cultures spread out through millennia have used mathematics like pi and the Fibonacci sequence, phi, right? The golden ratio, the golden medium. They've used these and built phenomenal structures, the pyramids, all different types of things. They've used these in these cultures in completely different areas, spread out through hundreds and hundreds of years. And that's because it's an understanding that is based in objective truth and objective reality, right? So it can be utilized for our benefit. And this is all about the discovery of nature, right? The mystery of nature. It's beautiful. And that's where pattern recognition really leads to that observation. It leads to the animistic mindset of observing, processing, discovering, and applying. So what is pi itself, right? Pi, here we go. Pi is the circle, right? Circumference and diameter. Right there, you have the circle dot itself, right? Esoterically, symbolically, the circle dot is huge. The dot representing the individual, the subjective experience, right? The circle representing the universe, representing nature, infinity, source, etc. So pi simply is, yes, circumference and diameter, which equates to a perfect circle. And of course, that number is 3.14159 ... and it keeps repeating until infinity, right? It appears all throughout nature. Hold on, I got too many windows open. There we go. We can see this all throughout nature, from flower petals to seashells to pine cones. I mean, all over the place, right? And it's a part of aesthetics. If you look into the philosophical category of aesthetics, pi and phi, the golden ratio or the Fibonacci sequence, are very much in aesthetics, right? That there is an objective harmony and an objective beauty to nature. It's very, very fascinating. Now, pi, let me get my, I'm sorry, guys. Hold on one second. I had some images that I wanted to. Okay. All right. Yeah, I have a few images that I'll put up as I go. So we can see pi in vortex motion, obviously galaxy and waves, and it's really hidden inside the simple geometry of a circle, right? It's a number that never ends and never repeats. It appears everywhere in nature. I think the simulation theorists, right, they point to this pi and phi as part of the quote unquote matrix itself, right? Now, I will say that, yes, it is a simulation, but obviously a simulation has multiple definitions. Do I think it's an actual computer program that we're plugged into? No, I do not. Do I think it is self-similar and holographic on all levels and scales? Yes, I do. Right? So these are two different definitions that also mean simulation, self-similar, holographic. And this obviously can be related to the Hermetic principle in Hermeticism, right? Natural law principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without, that the universe itself is holographic and self-similar on all levels and scales, from the macrocosm to the microcosm. It is like, as above is like that which is below. So what does pi, what is this signal? Seeing this sequence, seeing this code that we can this pattern that we can decode, right? What is this telling us? It is telling us that there is an order to reality itself, right? There is a governing structure, that nature is lawful and it works a certain way at its most fundamental and foundational levels. It's exactly what we talk about when we talk about natural law, because that's what it is. Natural law is discovering those governing dynamics. So every circle in the universe, right, obeys this ratio. And the infinite complexity inside even simple forms show pi itself, right? So when we talk about sound resonance, orbital mechanics, electromagnetic fields, we see pi through all of those, right? And although I'm not going to get into those because my mind will explode at this point, getting into super analytical, I do want to say one thing about waves and sound resonance and even fluid dynamics and all of the electromagnetic fields, right? This is where I disagree with a lot of physicists and materialists when they speak of these things. Let's do a wave itself, right? A wave is not a thing. A wave is what something does, right? And this is what keys into the ether, that the ether is the medium of reality that penetrates everything, right? So a wave is what is an effect of what something does. Here's a good analogy. You're in a swimming pool. You take your hand and you slap the water. The water ripples out, right, in circles, and that can be measured, right? And we will see pi in those measurements. But those ripples and those waves are not a real thing. We are observing and experiencing a phenomenon, an effect, right? It is still water. Water at a different resonance, at a different frequency. This is why it's so important to understand the ether itself, right? Understanding that the cause and the effect nature of reality can be understood, just as we can observe society and see how fucked up it is, and we can understand the cause. Having the correct diagnosis of cause and effect is vital. As many of physicists and materialists talk about something like a wave as a thing or a field as a thing, right? They're completely negating its actual causal factor of the ether itself, what something does to cause something else. So all of that can be measured, right? Just as the human condition is measurable itself. We can measure, we can obviously observe, we could see through individual and collective and aggregate behavior what people are thinking, the actions that people are taking, and that can be measured itself, right? So even something as morality and freedom is a measurable dynamic that can be measured itself. So the point being with that little rant, is that nature is cyclical. There are these cycles, right? Pi governs cycles and repeating motion. It's the mathematical constant behind those cycles. Just like we can understand the ether, we can understand the cause, then we can understand its effect and also understand the cycles that it is going through, and we can predict those cycles as well, where it is going. So pi governs cycles, motion, and it is a mathematical constant, right? So the physicists have no qualm about actual natural laws. They just, many of them negate the metaphysical component and the psychological component as well. So pi also explains toroidal circulation, right? And something that is very interesting, and I'll tie this in with karma, what karma really is, and how this cycle, this motion, can be measured itself. Let me get this image up. Toroidal circulation. Okay, we'll do this. So, yeah, we'll get into that next. The toroidal, the circulation, right? It comes from a source point and then it spirals outwards, then inwards, and returns to source, right? That is the spiral. That is the toroidal, quote unquote, field, right? That's the kind of the symbol of that. If you take an inverted image of the spiral itself, it would be an hourglass. Very similar to, let me see if I have it here. I guess I don't, but this one will work. So if you look at the very middle, you could see this. Well, first, you see the Pisces symbol right there in the middle, which actually, if you split it in half, you have pi, right? Mirrored. A pi symbol on the bottom, pi symbol on the top, right? This is a toroidal field itself. The source, 0 point, is the line in the middle of that image going horizontally in the image. That's the plane of inertia. Then it flows outward, then comes back around, and then it comes back into source. And that, when it's flowing outwards, it's doing that. The outwards and then coming back around inwards creates a spiral, right? When we look at it top down, there's the nautilus shell or a hurricane, right? It's the spiral itself. So it's very interesting. Now, why I wanted to bring this up. When we think about natural law and moral law, right? We're bringing it down on the microcosm now, to the self, to the individual. Internally is where it starts. Do we understand right and wrong? Do we understand morality? Our actions are based upon the information that we hold. That's why it's important to be educated and not indoctrinated. It's important to constantly learn, right? And reevaluate what we quote unquote believe or know. That's so when we take actions and behaviors, they can be aligned with morality and truth and natural law. But starts internally, inward, then we take behaviors externally, and of course, it comes back around. The effect, or karma. Karma means a reaction, action that comes again. That's all the word karma means, right? Simply put, it is cause and effect. Now, we multiply that individual, multiply it by thousands, millions, billions, and we generate a condition of that. So we can see, even within the human condition itself, we can determine motion, cycles, conditions itself, right? Take the collective of humanity, the aggregated body of information. Do they understand right from wrong? Do they understand what true freedom is, or natural law, or objective morality? And then what is their external behavior like? What are the actions that the majority of people are taking? Correct? Moral? Or incorrect? Immoral? That's going to come back around to generate a condition. It's the torus. It's the spiral. Okay? It is pi day, baby. So that is pi, natural law governing circulation, feedback loops, systems. Pi can be measured in many different systems and ecosystems and biological functions as well. I mean, the list is go on and on about all the synchronicities and correlations with that. So yeah, the toroidal flow, red blood cells, a smoke ring. You can get into plasma. So a good insight, key insight, right, is that nature functions a certain way. It prefers circulating systems, symbiosis. It is constantly striving for homeostasis and symbiosis. In my opinion, it will have it. But for it to return to homeostasis, for instance, on this planet, right, that equation might not incorporate human beings the way humanity in the aggregate is acting within the one family of planet Earth, the biosphere. Since everything in nature is based upon relationships. That's the interconnected aspect of everything. What humans do obviously influences animals, plant life, the planet itself on all levels. So, nature, symbiosis, and what I call the rhythm of life is obviously harmonizing with that circulating flow where there's cohesion, no friction. So the cause and effect aspect of like toroidal flow, right, and natural law. I kind of touched on this a little bit. It's also called the boomerang effect. Or maybe, I don't know if that's a real, that's what I'm calling it. I've heard certain researchers talk about the boomerang effect. It's simply cause and effect, right? Energy flows outwards and eventually returns, like I explained a little bit ago, right? So, cliff notes on that last section about the template, the flow path, source, and this, again, as above, so below, the law of correspondence. This can be seen even on the macrocosm of the universe, right? The grand architect of everything, source, outward, circulation, and then return. On the microcosm, even on the individual, and all scales in between, right? The individual, community, larger areas, aggregate species, etc. It's always the same formula. Source, outward, circulation, return. Always the spiral. So at 100%, actions create consequences. That's the big question, is why? What's the condition of those consequences? And why do we have those consequences? Right? Huge, big part of my work. It's because we do not understand natural law, moral law. Therefore, our actions and behaviors are not in a alignment with the rhythm of life, with the flow, with nature, with creation. The torus is a perfect visual metaphor for natural law, as I expressed, right? What flows outward eventually comes back around. So, going back to pi, yes, pi, yes, random points, squaring the circle, right? You have random dots inside of a square. Those can approximate to pi, equate to the pi pattern. What does that mean, right? Squaring the circle. It means order out of chaos. That's what that means. Random dots still functions. See what it seems like chaos, right? You take a square, randomly put some dots, right? And then you take the measurements to each of those dots, and you will come up with a pattern of pi. That tells us that our perceptive lens sees chaos, and yet still, underneath the layers is natural law, is order. The governing dynamics within the fabric of reality. Now, of course, the social engineers always invert. It's the one principle that they do, is invert nature. Take truth, because they do understand natural law on many, many, many levels, but take that information and invert it and use it against us, right? That's why a huge slogan, of course, for social engineers is order out of chaos, right? They are manufacturing the chaos to generate their order, the order that they wish and desire. Now, the sequence, well, let's get into pi and phi, right? These are the two great constants. They go together like peanut butter and jelly. So now we're going to introduce the golden ratio itself, right? So we have two major constants appear repeatingly together. And the golden ratio itself let me get my, well, I think I just had it up. Yeah, we can see this. There, phi and pi and phi are both in here, but the golden ratio is obviously if pi is circular, phi is spiral. So these go together in everything that we've talked about, right? Sunflower seeds, the exact same pattern going both directions of those seeds. If you start from the center, and if you would count those seeds going clockwise and then count them going counterclockwise, they would equate. The nautilus shell, hurricanes, toroidal, all that kind of stuff, right? We have pi and phi in there. So, again, pi, circular motion, phi, spiral, growth, amplification. Here's something that's pretty little fun fact that we'll get into real quick. First, let me check in with y'all. Sorry, I could put the chat on the screen. Theo Lux, what's up, brother? Everything? Yes. Okay, cool. I appreciate you. Okay. So I kind of touched on this already a little bit, but I just want to, the image with the Pisces. And yes, I'm a Pisces as well, or, Western astrology, but I found this very interesting. Yes. Okay. So real quick, the Vesica Pisces, right? So it's two circles that intersect, obviously symbolizing unity, becoming duality. It represents the balancing of polarity. It's a generative geometry. From that pattern emerges triangles, hexagons, golden rectangles, etc. Right? So complex order emerges from simple relationships, right? I always say simplify the profound, but it's fascinating that, so the Vesica Pisces, sorry, I should have had a better image. Kind of got behind today, so I didn't get my images intact. Looking at the image on the screen, you could see the toroidal. You have a circle on the left, circle on the right. It converges in the middle, and from there, the tons of symbolic representations. Right, the masculine and the feminine, the left and the right. Hemispheres of the brain. So you have opposing polarities, and that plane of inertia, the Vesica Pisces right there in the middle is the balancing point of both of the polarities itself. Oops. Covered what I already wanted to cover for that section. So yes, nature, what does nature really consist of, right? When we're doing mathematics, I mentioned this earlier about mathematics being man-made. To describe what nature really is, which consists of ratios, proportions, pressure mediation, pressure gradients, right? So we can see that there's an equilibrium system going on. And again, it can scale widely within those systems. And of course, mathematics obviously didn't create nature's order, right? It just helps human beings discover what it is. And it is a powerful tool, 100%. All right. So why does this information matter? How can we use this mathematical code to understand phi and the golden ratio, pi and phi, right? The one and the one. And that is obviously number one, which I touched on earlier, right? This is another perspective of understanding the objective dynamics in nature, 100%. And when we can think, have that systems level worldview, where we can think in correlative systems, meaning that each system influences the others. And getting into pressure mediation itself, right? If an influence or an effect happens in one system, it's going to affect many others. We can understand where that's going to go and, predict what the effect will be. But obviously understanding the cause and the feedback that we ourselves are either stuck in or need to strive for. Of course, looking at the human condition, what's the biggest feedback loop for humanity? There's a few. Ultimately, it can be kind of reduced down to one major feedback loop. Of course, that's the belief in human authority itself, the externalization and the outsourcing of conscience, the outsourcing of our own responsibility and empowerment. And we do that in many, many ways. It's religion, government, scientism, educational systems, right? Even financial systems, keeping people in this state of thrall through the fiat monetization of energy itself, right? Or our energy, our movement, our flow, our circulation. So understanding these larger systems and understanding those patterns, ultimately strengthening pattern recognition, thinking in systems, and understanding the cause of those feedback loops. And hold on. Sorry, guys. Where did I put it? All right. We will move on. So yes, understanding what I was looking for, I wanted to, and maybe many of you have seen it. There's an old school cartoon of Donald Duck in a Masonic lodge going through the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, pi and phi. I was trying to get that to show a clip of that. It easily can be found, and it's fun to watch. And actually, it's great for even kids to check out. And there's tons of Masonic symbolism in there. And but it's really good that it's taken it from the Pythagorean lens, and there's music in there with obviously, the octaves, fourths, fifths, all that kind of stuff is great to understand, which is all part of pi and phi are all part of the quadrivium method as well. So extremely useful to discover. Now, like I was saying, this is deep, the potential to kind of understand this information and understand what these patterns are. Now, there's a million videos, New Agers fucking talking about pi, the golden ratio, all that kind of stuff. But what I mean by getting down to how is that useful for human beings to influence or to understand what is going on in the world, to understand the human condition. And as we are human beings, it always comes back to what we do in life. Therefore, it always comes back to behavior and morality, right? To understand why we get certain behaviors and certain actions, of course, that's going to be psychology, right? Remember the toroidal pattern: inward care, mentation, internally, outward into behavior, and then comes back around as consequence and effect. So again, pi governs the rhythm of cycles. What kind of rhythm are we in as a species right now? Let me go back. Cosmic code. That's right. Nicolo, thank you. We are the program and the programmers. Well, yes, we are the program and the programmers, but we are not the game, right? There is an overarching system that we are in, and that is objective reality, nature, creation, right? I don't use the word God in that aspect, mainly for the cultural religions. They think it's some kind of deity. And absolutely, creation, nature, this is the animating principle of life, of all force, 100%. And we can see that in pi and phi itself. We are the thick-boned. Yeah, so with pi governing the rhythm of cycles, we can see that where humanity is going absolutely can and will get worse if we're being honest with ourselves, right? Even pi in history, they say history repeats. Yes and no. What does that mean, right? Well, pi itself is a repeating pattern, but not with the same numbers, right? It never uses the same numbers. So yes, history can repeat, meaning that we can see the same patterns, tyrannical systems, humanity enslaved, but it can be in a different form, right? Like when people, say World War III, they might be referencing from past information, what World War II or I looked like, right? And not even considering that World War III is completely psychological and based on mind control, right? Or it can be something even more, something different. So something to think about, right? Yes, history repeats, but not always in the same form and fashion. And then, of course, phi shapes the spiral growth of form. Shapes the spiral growth of form, giving us the condition of our rhythm. What is the condition of the momentum, the direction that we are going? So if the human condition is one of slavery, and it's getting worse, right? And then absolutely it can get at infinite depths. It can go in all different types of form of hell, essentially, right? But yet could also go the other direction 100%. Of course, understanding those causal factors to shift the momentum, to shift the pattern, the rhythm from the feedback loop that we are stuck in to get us out of the cycle of control, duress, and violence, right? And change the form or shape of the spiral growth. Individual consciousness, right? Higher awareness. You're raising up that spiral, or you are descending into lower mind or devolving in awareness. Same thing on the human collective scale, right? It's like we talk about evolution. Evolution is not the propagation of genes. It's epigenetically, and it's about awareness. It's about consciousness. And the main hurdle, the one hurdle human beings need to understand is how to think and how to act. How to act in reality. And that, my friends, is objective morality, meaning that there is an objective standard at the very base level. Don't steal. Murder, assault, rape, trespass, theft of property, coercion, and deception. We start from there. If we can educate people on that, then we can try to shift the motion. But understanding those 7 transgressions needs to be applied on all scales. When I used to go out on the street with some of my friends, we'd set up a table. We have signs. Government is the root of all of our problems and all this kind of stuff. This was during the whole pandemic, right? To engage in conversation and kind of spark some critical thinking. I had a lot of people that agreed with me on those 7 transgressions. They're like, yeah, of course. Of course, don't do those things, right? The glazed look in their eyes when I told them, okay, let's apply this to life. Let's apply this to government and its institutions. Woo! Hard break. Hard break. People were like, what? Well, no, that's different. That's different. Why is it different? Inconsistent and hypocritical, right? That is right there. When that would happen, boom, Agent Smith effect. That's the MK Ultra mass cultural programming kicking right in. Most people learn that from the indoctrination camps and the generational mind control they got from their own family dynamics growing up. So, nature. Oh, sorry, guys. All right. So, what nature operates through lawful relationships of proportion and balance. Lawful relationships of proportion and balance. Is humanity in a state of cohesion, symbiosis, and balance with nature? 100% no. That's an easy answer. That's an easy answer. People are lying to themselves if they think otherwise, right? So we are in a state of imbalance. The same geometry that governs circles, waves, galaxies also governs the consequences of human behavior. Natural law is simply the moral expression of the universe's deeper order. 100%. The biggest hurdle for humanity is to understand that phrase, that statement right there, that there is a deeper, objective, immutable order, that is not created by human beings, inherent in the very fabric of reality and nature, and we can come to understand, discover, understand, and harmonize our actions and behaviors with to achieve the rhythm of life. Not just achieve, it's ongoing process, right? To step into the slipstream of the rhythm of life, to be in balance, to be in alignment. So, these categories of pi and phi are a great talking point that I think everyone should discover, mathematically, but also the geometry, but also, like I said, for the perceptive ability of bigger systems. Sure, see pi and the golden ratio in a flower, in a seashell, in the human face itself, in the hand, in the human body. Recognize all those, but also see it in larger systems, social dynamics, community. The path towards freedom, and of course, within our own individual life, right? If you are stuck, if you can recognize your own negative, bad habits, your habitual negative habits that keep you stuck in a feedback loop, you can recognize those patterns, then 100% you could step out of them. All right, y'all. What you guys got in the comments? I know I sound a little stuffed up. I've been a little congested today. Let me see. So one number change in pi changes pi. Pi is ultimately an infinite amount of combinations. Wakito. Yes. Yep. Well said. Oh, appreciate you, Jim. Oh, it's good to see X is working. Okay, right on. What else we got? Mutability. Yep. I'm 16 seconds sober. Okay. Stepping out of that feedback loop. 16 minutes fresh. So yeah, guys and gals, I wanted to do about an hour. I mean, today being Pi Day. Now, of course, there's so much more to talk about if you want to understand the symbolism and the synchronicities of pi and phi, right? You can go and explore those. I wanted to touch on that today because it's obviously synchronistic. It's 314. Pi Day, but also throw in the correlative aspects of morality and natural law and these systems on the human level and the social behavioral level as well. Also, remember that the Funnel Conference, all the replays are up. You guys can go to Freedom Under Natural Law. Check out those replays. Oh, man, so many badass presentations. Just another shout out to all the contributors, the presenters, the musicians that just did phenomenal work. Another Funnel Conference down. That was great. It was really great. I highly recommend people go through each of those presentations, take them in order because they were uploaded in order, or you can watch the full day through, right? Then you get all the fun little commentary in between the videos and you can kind of experience. And sure, it's long. Take it in pieces, right? Enjoy it. A lot of good knowledge and inspiration there, I think, for people to take in. So absolutely. Again, my website, I'm working on a really big project for natural law for people to use to help educate people on natural law. And that will be, I'll have more information and I'll be able to kind of release that pretty soon. I want to kind of do it in the next couple weeks. So I'm looking forward to that. And again, I'm going to be streaming live tomorrow on the Season of Sacrifice. So I will do a post, share it out. I'll create the event on my channels. So whatever you're watching this on, come back. It'll be there. People need to understand this time period and how to utilize it, but also the awareness of how these psychopathic, parasitic social engineers, how they utilize this time period, right? To influence perception, to create trauma. Because perception management equates to behavior control. Real sorcery, a real weapon of control is the influence of perception. That's the kind of war that we are really in and we have been ensconced in. Too many people put an influence on these talking head, the president, prime minister, right? Those are just puppets. Those are just faces for you to see on TV or on a screen, right? On the Black Mirror. All about your perception, individual's perception, because the worldview that we hold and the information that we hold influences and dictates our behavioral free will choices. So tomorrow, check that out. I will do that. Let me see, probably either 10 or 11 a.m. Pacific time for me. That'll be 1 or 2 p.m. Eastern. And why don't we have... Oh, yeah, Nick. Great question. Yes, the relationship between Pi and the natural cycles and ancient megaliths in different periods of time. Yeah, man. I mean, that is a huge rabbit hole. You and I need to hook up. We need to there's some topics that you and I align with very much, and we should definitely have a great back and forth. So we'll connect. But this is a great one. Great question. I do like, and I'm, admittedly fresh into Jason Bashour's information. I think he does fantastic work. Michael Tellinger dives into this kind of stuff. And yes, I mean, that without diving into it, it's just confirmation of the natural the natural cycles and these huge megaliths, like I talked about in the beginning of this stream, right? Separated through millennias and completely different locations, and they still used pi and phi to encode in their architect of these megaliths to align with natural cycles as well. So, yeah, brother, we'll hook up. We'll hook up. Let's do this. All right, y'all. Well, I just wanted to do a quick hour. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Let me know what you guys thought. I want to do more live shows. Again, tomorrow, Season of Sacrifice. Huge, huge episode. Vital. And until then, have a great day, have a great evening, and I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Much love. Again, my website, willkeller.com. Go there, check out all my presentations and my content, and I will see y'all tomorrow.